Hello and welcome to the Reroll Multiple Martial Arts podcast, where we explore the intersections of martial arts, society, and culture. I'm Elliot.
I'm Danny.
So, Danny, I've been getting into Kung Fu lately. Our last conversations, I've been a little resistant, but I've been doing some research, and it is intriguing, the world of Kung Fu.
I'm excited to hear you say that, mainly because I think Kung Fu is one of those martial arts that people turn their backs on. I remember being a kid, 13, even younger, and back in the day we didn't have internet. It wasn't even a thing. So there was no YouTube, Netflix, and streaming services. It's whatever was on the TV on those basic maybe 5 networks, and the smaller one had Kung Fu at least twice a week. I remember like Sunday evenings and maybe like Friday nights. And Kung Fu was the martial art that all of us in the neighborhood felt if we could only learn it, we would be unstoppable. And then there was that whole generation of us that just idolized Kung Fu. And here we are in the past 5 years. I believe that same generation, because it's the same of us. Like I hear the people talking about it, and they're in their 40s, so, but now they're saying, scrap it. Kung Fu is useless. So I'm excited that you're thinking, hey, is there really some credibility to it? And I'd like to just pose that question to you. Like, what are you catching? What are you seeing? What's going on?
In the one of the previous episodes, I had said that I would not be interested in training in Kung Fu. But as I'm looking, and doing more research, Kung Fu is a huge, vast umbrella term that just means Chinese martial arts. And within that umbrella, there are all kinds. So there are the, different styles that, traditional, clans or schools or what have you would keep secret. And some of them, are long gone. I think there's a lot of traditionalism in Kung Fu, and a sifu or an instructor or teacher would take on students, who would learn for 10 plus years and actually master it. And so if you think of the old school, people took this seriously. It was an art form that was highly regarded in society. And even in some of the documentaries I've seen, some of the older guys have said, hey, there's a gun, what are you going to do against a gun? And so there's a lot of different interpretations. There's also a master who said, I'm not an instructor. I teach for physical fitness and for health. And so that's a style that, he differentiates. And so, one of the biggest differentiations is the hard Kung Fu, the hard martial art, which is the fighting, punching, kicking, what have you. And there is the soft martial art, which is healing the body, healing yourself, using your own energy to heal yourself. And there's also, which is a newer style or approach to Kung Fu, is Wushu. Wushu is for show, is for competition. It's what looks pretty. And these, the Wushu styles are usually taught in school, and there's not much of a function. And so it's so layered. It's so layered because, you have Tai Chi, and that is for health, but you have other styles that are for self-defense that don't look pretty.
Well, I think of Kung Fu as one of those martial arts that, as I said earlier, we all learned was a way of fighting. We learned that was like what the amazing people we saw on TV did. And as a young preteen, I didn't distinguish entertainment versus martial art. I knew I was watching movies. I could tell the fake blood, like the flying guillotine. Did you see that movie?
No. I've seen the cover of it though.
Oh, it's amazing. I was in shock. I was like, whoa, that guy's head just flew off. But I knew it was a movie. But in reflection, I did believe that this was like a vision of what a fighter could do with their level of training. But you're itemizing. One is that Kung Fu seems to be an umbrella term for a very vast field of combat training, and also even a mislabeling of what we have learned to see as Kung Fu, because now I think about Kung Fu very differently. I was watching TV with my daughter, and we were watching one of the many Bruce Lee films, biopics. And then she said something about Jackie Chan. And she said, do you think Jackie Chan will be like a legend like Bruce Lee? And I'm like, no, he's not. And not because Jackie Chan is not an amazing martial artist. I think tons of people have said otherwise, that like he is an amazing martial artist. And also Jackie Chan has made even more films than Bruce Lee. And I will even argue this. He has had a greater impact on American cinema and fighting cinema than Bruce Lee. Without being disrespectful to Bruce Lee, I'm just saying that Jackie Chan has been working longer, so therefore I would say he has greater impact. But to the point, I don't think he's going to be remembered as highly as Bruce Lee as a legend. And the legend of Bruce Lee is not just because he's a groundbreaking Chinese American, but the legend of Bruce Lee is that he is a groundbreaking fighter. But I just want to get to a point here that the fighting we got to see was entertainment Kung Fu. Like Bruce Lee on film is, I don't know if it's fair to say it's Wushu, but it is a Kung Fu that is made for entertainment. Jackie Chan's Kung Fu is for entertainment. The kicks have to look a certain way so that the camera catches a beautiful kick. And I think that's where maybe we got in trouble. Like we didn't catch the memo that like this is a stylized version, but if you really want to learn the hard, gritty combat, it's gonna look a little bit different.
Yeah, when I get a house or a place with a bigger backyard, I will definitely put a Wing Chun dummy and practice, because it's cool. You know, it's a way of, I guess, quote unquote, preserving, quote unquote, my culture in a way. But also, you know, I've been been doing research and seeing stuff that Tony Ferguson does. And Tony Ferguson practices Wing Chun and other forms of Kung Fu and practices on the Wing Chun dummy. The Wing Chun dummy is, of course, the classic big, giant, tall stump with some, 3 sticks coming out and a bigger stick in the end, like a leg. And you see it in like the Ip Man movies and stuff like that. And, Tony Ferguson trains in that. And, I saw a Joe Rogan clip demonstrating, in one of the clinches he was having, Tony Ferguson, he, did a Wing Chun move because he's trying to, gain the upper hand. You're kind of wrestling with the arms, and in that elbowed his opponent in the face. And so, these things like that, I'm like, cool. Like, this is Wing Chun training. Is Wing Chun the only thing somebody should do? No. But I think seeing this and doing more research, it's like, hey, this can work. And it's really nice to hear, really refreshing to hear, because it is true. There are a lot of martial arts, and there's only a handful of moves that you can adopt from one style, that meshes well with the other styles that we've been training in. And okay, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about, you said that there's only a certain number of styles and moves, and I think about like how I may sound like a Bruce Lee fanboy, because
me too.
because I just think so much of what I know is through an icon that I never even took Jeet Kune Do. I never got a chance to. Danny Nosanto is another icon that I really revere, respect. He still teaches. I mean, if you want to know Jeet Kune Do, Danny Nosanto is like, I think, the source. But to the point that when I think about fighting, I think it was Bruce Lee. In my memory, it's Bruce Lee who says this, that like fighting is pretty simple. He says, as long as you're fighting a human being, there's only a few things they can do. So there's only 2 arms and 2 legs. And he makes a point of like, unless you're fighting an alien with more arms or more legs. But that to me is the essence of why it doesn't matter. Like I was thinking about this sense of like, well, how many different ways can you punch someone in the head? And there are a bunch of ways, by the way. I think there's probably like 30, but there isn't a million. I mean, if you break it down to a million, I think you're kind of ridiculous. There's some basic ways. You can kind of hit them straight. You can go side, around. You can hit them from the top. You can hit them from the bottom. You can hit them at a 45 angle. Anyway, after that, you're done. Once you've mapped out the head and you've gone, okay, I can go this way, this way, this way, I think you end up with like 6 or 8 degrees. And then you take it to all these different martial arts and they all have a different way of interpreting the angles. But I find that it is the same thing. It's still a human body with 2 arms, 2 legs, a very basic torso. The head is on the top, and the feet on the bottom. So how complicated can we make it?
I've been watching some UFC, and one fighter, Kevin Holland, his introduction before he fights is he introduces himself as a kung fu fighter. And I thought that was really interesting because, you hear Bruce Buffer say it and, it says kung fu fighter, Kevin Holland, right? And Kevin Holland, he smiled. He's like, yeah, kung fu fighter, because he started off with kung fu. That was his first introduction to martial arts, and then branched off in other things. And so it's cool to see that, to see that represent and to kind of reclaim it. I think kung fu, it's so much. I think it's too broad of a style to really put a judgment on. And I think, being a human being myself is to rethink, because 2 months ago I would have said, nah man, forget kung fu, but it's a different approach. Now I'm thinking, hey, when this COVID stuff lifts, when everything's better, I want to okay, I saw this documentary, Master Zhao, Zhou, and he practiced. Long story short, you can watch the documentary, read up on him. He trained really hard and knows how to control his chi, his energy, and he's able to heal people. He's able to do things that you can say so-called Western science can't really interpret. And so, so seeing this, it's like, wow, Master Zhao, and you see his practice and the people who have benefited from this. I want to learn that. I want to be able not only to defend myself physically, but also heal myself with my own energy and being in tune with myself. I think is a deeper look into oneself, and to spend time like that, I think, in this industrialized age, everything's, fast timing. We need time to slow down and invest in ourselves. And I think this approach, Qigong, Qigong, is one way that I think would be a good approach. Are you into that, Danny? Do you think that, this whole, of course, the movies are a little bit more exaggerated with deep breaths, but, something like that.
I am, surprisingly, and I am in a different kind of way. Like I am, a materialist, I guess the word is. I'm one of those people that are. I say this always. I'm a practicing atheist, and I only say that because it makes sense how to explain it. Because people are like, "Oh, you don't believe in God?" I was like, "I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet, but I know that I'm a practicing atheist." And what does that mean? It's like that I practice things that an atheist would. So if I can't find a physical reason, or if I can't find a medical reason or a chemical reason, I usually stumble, like, I'm not going to use it. So, but that doesn't mean that I don't understand that there are things that are capable of aligning our bodies, so that even, when you think about the issue of meditation, and people say like, why do you meditate? That's pretty lame. It's like, yeah, but you're not giving credit to that moment of isolation and focus, and how your brain, if you're being monitored, realigns. You're like, okay, what does that mean that your brain realigns? Like, to me, that's magical. Like, how can you do that? How can you make all of the neurons shoot differently and make a different map on the readings, right? That is the type of things that I think other time periods would say is powerful. Now we become very cynical. Like, that's not powerful. That's just science. It's still powerful, by the way. It's still powerful. The fact that someone can, for example, turn off the issues of like pain receptors to the point that the brain doesn't get the messages. They're still being injured, but they don't cry out in pain. That's power. And again, people would say, well, that's only because, science has told us that it's a way of blocking certain like receptors and signals. I'm like, yeah, you're only translating what one thing is done in one tradition and what another one says, so that if science says that's all that's happening, that's just explaining something that I can't do. Like, it's still powerful to see someone do that. But I think this reminds me of our conversations on like the distinction between traditional martial arts and sports combat, or purely self-defense combat. Traditional martial arts were always more expansive in what they were trying to teach you. They were not trying to teach you how to just beat up people. They were trying to teach you how to be a better human being. And I think that you're onto something when you say, even the issue of like energy. It may not be the language that I use, but I do believe that there's something there. Universally, across this planet, hundreds and hundreds of communities have always said there's something about human energy. There's something about the spirit, not just the spirit, like something that's non-tangible and how it manifests on the body, so that you can collapse because you lost your soul, or your energy was injured. I think there is something to that, and I want to just kind of respect it. So I that's my long-winded answer to say that I respect it.
That's cool because, I think we're really lucky to live in Southern California, the greater Los Angeles region, so to speak. And, Master Zhao lives in or practices out of El Monte. And so it's amazing that there is somebody there. There are these people that are so close. And I mean, yeah, right now it's COVID. Hopefully after, I would like to learn from, maybe take a few of his courses. And I'm thinking, maybe I should put Muay Thai on pause. Muay Thai will always be there, but this person's knowledge may not be there forever. I mean, he's handing out his knowledge to his granddaughter, but I would like to explore from the source.
No, that's the way to do it. I don't know. I just feel lucky that we are in a time when so much information is available. But having said that, it doesn't mean we get an opportunity to take advantage, or advantage, I don't like the word advantage, but that we don't get to all my words are problematic. Capitalize. I just wish that we were able to kind of think about, like, how can you recognize that, you should do it? Because I think of, I keep referencing Danilo Santo, and he's in Southern California. I've never taken a class. And when I think of Danilo Santo, I put him up as a living legend. Like, he's someone that people make comic books about.
Absolutely.
And you can walk into his class and ask permission to be his student, and he will teach you. And then why not? Why don't I take that drive? And right now it's a bad example because COVID-19 shut everything down. But I feel you. I feel that you're right. You're right into saying, wow, I want to learn. And I will put it this way. When I was doing Shotokan, I was part of this association called the American Japanese Karate Association, the AJKA. And the JKA is the Japanese Karate Association. That one is like their central Shotokan hub, But the American version has a European chapter. Anyway, it's a big group. And the big cheese was here, and we did the training, like every summer we'd go to like Shotokan camp, karate camp. And it was like a karate camp, like sleepover bunk beds, and like wake up at 6:30 in the morning, do karate. I mean, like it was.
That's the real deal right there.
Yeah, you train 3 times a day.
It's like a movie.
Yeah, it was. You paid, you trained in the morning, took a shower, went to have breakfast, rested for about 1 to 2 hours. Then you had class around 11 or noon. Then you had lunch, took a shower, rested. Then you had like 3 or 4 the next one. And then by 5 or 6, you were done, and you went, hung out in I think it was in Carlsbad at their little pier area, socialized with other people, went to bed early, which really wasn't early. By early, it's like 2 a.m. early. Because you're up with all these cool people. And then did again. But anyway, the point is that he was talking about different martial arts, and he was sharing a story that someone said, what do you think about judo? And what do you think about Muay Thai? And what do you think about, like, how do these, and he was like, oh, those are all great arts. And then he was like, well, why don't you learn them, if they're so good? And he's like, because there's only so much time. And I've dedicated my life to this one art. Because that's really the truth, that even if you pick up a lot of stuff, you are always going to be enriched. But there's an opportunity or recognition that you're losing out in the other. So if you only have 10 hours and you dedicate those 10 hours to 3 different arts, it's not the same as dedicating 10 hours to one art. It goes back to Bruce Lee's logic of, like, be scared of that man that's practiced one kick 10,000 times instead of the person that has 10,000 moves. So I'm just thinking about this reality of time that we are under, stressed.
I know. We always come back to that issue of time, how much we have available, and what would we train in with this amount of time. And I think it's great that, in a sense, it always fluctuates. Every time we talk, it shifts. Push and pull, and it's almost like, lately in the past few years, I've been trying to, when it comes to music, I've been trying to see more legendary people and those who might pass very soon. I think I've missed many legends who have passed, and so in the same way, because I see martial arts and music in a really similar way, and so and so similarly, I would like to learn from certain masters or legends, like you said, D, in this one art, and hopefully get some knowledge out of it and improve our lives somehow. So yeah, I mean, so if I was to answer your question from a few weeks back, what would I learn right now, out of quarantine? I would love to learn Qigong from Master Zhao. I think that is really important. Yes, I can, also do practicing on the side, shadow box, jump rope, and everything on the side by myself. I would like to learn Qigong.
I like the way that you're framing, this sense of introspection, because as we've been able to kind of share these recurrent talks, there is something that I feel is like unraveling, and that has to do with this question of like, what is martial arts? And I feel that there's like two divides. You can think about an internal manifestation of the art and an external manifestation. I shared a story, I think, probably like the second time we recorded, about training with this one guy when I was doing Shotokan, and that my sensei didn't want to promote him to black belt. And the reason he didn't was that he didn't feel it would be good for our dojo. And I'm going to assume that he also felt it wouldn't be good for him. Because he was good. He was a brown belt. I was a brown belt. When we sparred, I would humbly say he was better than me. I was able to catch him a few times because he had a much more flashy sparring, and mine was always straightforward. Anyway, I just remember my interaction with him wasn't that he wasn't good, is that he was cocky, arrogant, disrespectful. And that type of person missed the whole point of martial art, I think. Because I've been fortunate to consider a lot of people my senseis, my teachers in martial arts. And most of the time they were a little bit older. Now that I am older, they're younger. But there's always something interesting about their position. Like, I grant them a lot of respect. Like, I give them, it's surprising me how much trust I give them. Like while I'm here training with you, I'm not going to get hurt. So if you tell me, Danny, I want you to go harder, I'm going to fight harder. But I don't believe that you're doing that because you want me to pop a knee or get a broken nose, But I believe that what they're telling me is, you see something that I don't. Like, you may be seeing me feel a little bit intimidated, and you're like, no, man, go out there, and break through that fear. And what I say that is that's what martial arts can offer us, is a distinction between the outside and the inside, and the relationship between the inside and the outside. And maybe that's how these things connect. Like, Qigong is internal, and it's an investment on something that is, I don't know, it's hard for a lot of people to even consider. Like, if I am one of those combat defense people, they only want to know what will hurt someone. If I'm a sports-based competitor, what will hurt them, but what will give me victory and give me the prize? I don't think traditional martial arts really has that same conversation. I think a lot of it is like, what's good for you? Like, how's your heart? How's your energy? How's your soul? How's your mind? And I don't mean the gray matter, the brain. I'm just thinking the way you're processing thoughts. And what happens when you practice a martial art that is internal? Because that's what I think Qigong is. And I know very little of it. Maybe you can give me more on it, but that's how I'm interpreting it. It's an internal art.
I've only seen one documentary and looked at some stuff online about Master Zhao and Qigong. But it was a nice reminder for myself of the healing power of our own energies, of like you said, meditation and other approaches of investing in our own selves, and knowing how to control and harness our energy. And I'm not trying to talk about magic or anything like that, but you see of things such as, like, for example, Bruce Lee's like with the 6-inch or 3-inch punch, 1-inch punch. You can see his body. You can see the way his movement goes from his feet all the way into his fists and punching that guy, and the guy flies. I mean, that's a part of knowing how to harness your own chi. And so using that energy in different ways is a really helpful approach. And I think a lot of people, it's hard to interpret, because like, how do you say chi? Like, you can't see it, you don't really, you can't, it's not really made for fighting, it's a internal thing. So that's all I can really say.
Is it also possible to consider that investing in one art can complement another? For example, some people invest in yoga, and I know yoga is not necessarily a martial art, but they invest in thinking about what a daily routine of serious yoga does for them in grappling, in Muay Thai, in karate, in wrestling. And the reason I think it's important is that some people go, oh, so you're investing in stretching? They're like, no, I'm not investing in stretching. I'm investing in something that dedicates a moment of contemplation and breathing that will help my body. And I think that's, I don't know, I'm just seeing this idea that like certain things that sound very exotic and maybe even magical, and I put that in quotes because that might give it the sense of like, oh, I don't believe in it, or things that are quite in line with what we understand as part of, I don't know, regular logic, science logic, just whatever you kind of give credit to, I guess.
I see yoga as holding poses for long periods of time and works our core. You see, it's like the so-called the farmer strength. You see these, or you see these Muay Thai guys who look really skinny. Lord Sila or some of these guys on the Pet Yindi Academy. They don't have the movie muscles, but they got the core, and that is where the power comes from. And I think that as part of that, you see these older Thai guys, they got some weight on them, but man, like it's deceiving. It really brings me to another. We can talk about it, another time. But the idea, when I started training martial arts, my perception of body image totally changed. And it's from going to the competitions and seeing, a cut, buff-looking dude getting outboxed and having, a chunkier guy with better conditioning and like winning, because it's like, wow, we wouldn't think, it's not the movies, it's real life. Like the real life is trippy. it's unexplainable, sometimes. So it's great. It's great seeing so many different variables and how things are not predictable, and that's kind of what I like about martial arts. The eye can be very deceiving.
And that goes to what we've been talking about in these past weeks. When we get a chance to share our thoughts on it, it really has to do with trying to make sense of what martial arts is as a field of practice, but what is a martial artist? And I feel that a lot of us don't care. Like, I know that I've had talks with friends that literally say, I don't care about that. That's lame. I want to know that I can defend myself. And I think that it misses the point. Like, there's something about knowing that you are transformed by dedicating to practice that from the outside feels external, but from the inside, from the practice, you realize it's investing internally in you.
And with that said, this has been the Reroll Multiple Martial Arts podcast, where we explore the intersections of martial arts, society, and culture. And I thank you for this good opportunity to kind of just wrestle our brains, because who else are we going to talk about this to? Well, until next time, see you later.